All right, grab your favorite mug. It's time for Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. Welcome back to Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. I'm your host, Aaron. Today, your coaches behind the clipboards, we've got Randy.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Randy. And Nick.
Hey, Aaron.
Excited you guys are here. Need all the brain trust for this one because it is a favorite. We're going to talk about retire now, retire often. And would you say that this is definitely one of those areas where people need clarity and focus?
Yeah. I think it's a paradigm shift.
It is because, like, I think a lot of people almost think about like skydiving, like they're filling this pack, right? And then they go up and they're on this journey, and then they jump out of this plane, and it's a one-time thing, and they hope that what they've got is going to basically catch them.
Right.
And really, what you guys teach is that it is our definition that needs to be corrected. And Randy, you do a phenomenal job in the classes of kind of taking us through the evolution of what we're taught or what we know is retire, not necessarily in a positive light, and then walk us through where we really should be. Could you paint that here for us?
Sure. You know, I think people think of retirement as a destination instead of a lifestyle. And one of the things that really helped me was to understand that retirement is something we should be doing all the time. We should teach our kids to retire.
Yeah.
You know, there's this idea that if I work really hard on my weaknesses, then, you know, I'm going to get better. But in reality, people who have weaknesses, if they work really hard on their weaknesses, will probably die with strong weaknesses. Right? So retirement is, you know, put away, do away with, no longer useful. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about really is a way of viewing the world under this idea that we all have talents and gifts and abilities.
Yeah. And none of those definitions, by the way, sound positive or exciting.
They're not.
Or something that I want to aspire to. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're reasonably certain if you pull the cord, you got nothing, right? You know,
no, absolutely.
Right? So, you know, we've tried to look at our team when we've built an organization and the way we work with people, and retirement should be something where I am eliminating things I'm not good at, that I don't like doing, that doesn't give me energy. And it's kind of like people, you know, some people give you energy. Like, you've been complimented a lot in your career because I've been around you for a while. You bring an energy to the room. People want to be around you, you know, that kind of thing. And then we have
most of the time.
Then we have Nick,
it's the coffee
too.
with the coach that kicks it helps.
All right, we're going sideways.
Yeah.
But, you know, the idea then that we're trying to talk about retire now, retire often, is to retire yourself from the things that you're not good at, that you don't enjoy and you don't love. So, you know, if I'm an engineer or an artist or a songwriter, and I love that, I mean, think of the Rolling Stones and, you know, some of the artists that are out there that are still performing in their 70s and 80s. And I went to a concert, and it was Tony Bennett. You know, so he never wanted to retire.
Right.
He was still doing it, you know. So if you love work, we don't think you should retire from work. We think you should be able to, like, you should have the financial security and the ability to retire. But retirement should be optional. Like, to me, the traditional sense of retirement ought to be a worst case scenario. It ought to be, you know, that's worst case scenario.
Right.
But you want to be financially and economically and mentally able to retire. But the thing we're talking about today is really, how do I retire from things and duties and things I don't enjoy that pull energy out of me? And how do I therefore retire into things that I really enjoy? And I spend my time and energy doing the things I love and care about.
I would say that the average client at our firm is 5 to 10 years away from retirement. There's other criteria, there's other things that kind of bring them in the door. But Nick, one of my favorite things is when they come in and they're like, Nick, I'm going to retire in about 5 years. What do I need to be doing? And you're like, retiring now. And you talked about the lifestyle, how you took that principle, that idea, that ethos, and you've implemented it. And I love watching their light bulbs go on. So maybe you could do that for our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think the first thing to really understand is that retirement is a made-up word. Okay, that, you know, this word came from a bunch of madmen, and the story goes even like on Wall Street, and they started campaigning this idea of retirement. Before that, it wasn't a thing. It was, you would retire from something, right? So like, retire to something, like retire to my chambers in the evening.
Yeah.
All right. So you were withdrawing from the room.
Yeah.
So
wait a minute. You've got chambers?
It's a beautiful home.
Sometimes I want to retire from this room.
I'm with you.
So, you know, but we missed you. So anyway, when I think about how we've redefined this word retire, it's Randy shared this concept with me back around 2008, 2009, and we had a brief kind of view of it, but it clicked for me around then. So I was young dad. I had 2 daughters at the time, and now I've got 3, all right? But I had 2, and, my work schedule, I'm working like crazy, literally doing the 70 hours a week, like killing it, doing what I need to do. Well, I saw, my baby girls for about, 20 or 30 minutes, maybe in the morning before work.
Yeah.
And I'd see them maybe for about 15, 20 minutes at the end of the day before they went to bed for the night.
Yeah.
And that was that's the time I had. So really the weekends mattered a lot.
Right. Because that's really the best time with the kids is right after they wake up and when you're trying to get them to go to bed at a reasonable time.
Right. Exactly. So, during that time, we lived on a little pond. There was a lot of kind of upkeep around the yard, but I liked doing yard work. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the nothingness of it. Like walk in a straight line, push the lawnmower. I'm not having to make a decision. I'm not having to think about things. It's just walk in a straight line, and the smells, in the yard and the fresh cut grass and, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I actually enjoyed it, but it was taking about 2.5 hours, give or take, to do the yard every week.
Sure.
And, it hit me, what would I pay somebody for 2 extra hours with my girls?
That's the important thing, the vantage point, the perception.
Yeah.
Because you didn't hate the yard work.
It's
It
not
was
that I didn't
actually an
like it.
escape for you in some ways.
But if I was to really think about where was value, well, value was at the time with my girls.
Right.
And so I could at that time, now inflation and everything else, these numbers are going to sound different today, but I paid $40 a week and I bought back 2.5 hours with my daughters.
Yeah. I mean, what a bargain.
And so I retired from yard work.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people do New Year's resolutions every year. Okay. And, there's a big debate. Do they work? Do they not work? I don't know. I know what my gym says, basically January through February it works and then it doesn't. But where I've really kind of changed or shifted my thinking is I try to identify 1 or 2 things every year that I can retire from.
Yeah.
What's something I can retire from this year? And again, Aaron, it could be something that I really, really enjoy. It could be something that's a good thing, but I want to replace good for best.
Right.
And so in framing that with retirement, I don't like the word retirement because that says I'm landing and it's done. I like the word retiring.
Right.
Because it's something that we should always be doing, as you were kind of alluding to, Randy.
So,
well, and y'all had talked about kind of somewhere here in the middle. It can be a combination of your passion, your pleasure, your expertise, making room for those things. Randy, how early would you like to see this modeled and encouraged? Like if you could say, hey, listen, when somebody's 21 years old, have this conversation with them, or when they're 15.
I way younger.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, everybody who's had children or coached or done anything like that, you see the giftedness of people. So I'm just a big believer that whatever those gifts are that are granted you by the Lord Almighty, then that is going to include your passions and your desires in that. So if you could help children or yourself identify those things, and you could create an environment. Like if I could push a button and redo the educational system, first of all, everybody wouldn't start at the same age because everybody's not ready for school, right? I'm not sure I would do school the way that we do it today. Not everybody learns the same way.
Right.
So now I have a good friend, and his wife this last year retired from kindergarten, okay? And she had an expression that I use over and over again.
Sure.
And it was this idea that everybody...
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
She retired from kindergarten. Does that mean like she had tried for the last
She
60
wasn't
years
good.
to
Nick,
pass
everybody
it?
isn't the same. She tried it.
She retired
And once
from
she was
kindergarten,
married,
done.
she's like,
Th-
look.
those Crayolas, they kept breaking. Yeah.
Dude, she's from Tennessee.
Oh, here we go. We can
Okay.
edit that out, right?
I'll
Yeah.
edit that one out. All right. I meant New York. So Anyway, now you all right. So she was a
always
kindergarten teacher.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And after about 30 years, she retired this last year. I got a kind of fun story there too. But anyway, she has great stories.
Yeah.
But she said something that was profound. She says, everybody homeschools, but not everybody knows they homeschool.
That's good.
And I thought, man, that is so powerful because, so really what we want to do, whether it's in business or in our own life, evaluating our own life and where we are and what we want to do with our life or our children's lives, is help them identify those gifts and those skills and work on their gifts and skills, work on their strengths. And so if you had a life that is filled with working on your strengths and your extraordinary ability and the things that you could do better than the average person, I think you're going to be happier. I think you're going to make more money. I think you're going to be more fulfilled, et cetera. So when should you retire? You should retire right now. Like you should identify those things and kind of like what Nick was saying, what are some things this year I could eliminate?
Yeah.
What could I eliminate instead of just add? Like I think our society is add more. If I add more, I'll be happier. If I had more, if I made more money, if I had more things, somehow I'd be happier. And really, that doesn't ever provide anybody. It might provide a thrill or some kind of short-term experience, but that's not contentment and happiness.
Absolutely. So we've said retire now. We've said retire often, have annual assessments, put those goals on there, make sure that this is an active lifestyle, like what you said, Nick. And I think Randy's treading right there in there. What's that necessarily like? We talk about, the lie, and we just got to keep going because we're already there.
Yeah. So, have you ever seen the horizon, Aaron?
Yes.
Here's the question. Can you get there?
Nope. I can run really fast.
You can run really fast.
I can jump in a car. I can fly.
And man, it's garbage, right? Like it keeps moving.
Yes.
Right? I'm trying to get closer and it moves and it moves and it moves. And some people would even say that this is called the lie of the horizon, like because it's kind of deceptive.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this idea of if I only had X, I would be happy. If I only made this much money, like if I could do that, I'd be happy. If I could move up the corporate ladder to this position with this title, with these benefits, I'm going to be happy. If I could only have a wife, 3 kids, a house, like I would be happy, a 2-car garage, like I would be happy.
And then you found out it was a 3-car garage, didn't you?
2.5, yeah. But the thinking is that we're always thinking forward about the next and the next, because once we reach these things, what we really discover, it wasn't that, like it's this. And if you live in this perpetual cycle of that would be enough, well, actually it's this. If I made $100,000, well,
Right.
if I make 150, if I made 300, if I made 500, and what you find is you can become extremely frustrated.
Yes.
You can be discouraged. You can get depressed, and you're not going to be your best self because you're always kind of moving forward. Now, some people would say, well, that's just ambition. Well, that's not a healthy form of ambition because there's nothing wrong with ambition. But this lie kind of pushes us forward.
Yeah.
But if we don't take a minute to pause and reflect and look backwards, and there's actually a book, The Gap and the Gain, and we may have talked about it on a prior episode, I think, but it's this idea of measuring backwards. Like, look at the ground I have taken. So, yes, I still might want the promotion. I still might want, a bigger house or a different car or, something.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But if you live your life that way, then you're going to live in chronic disappointment and upsettedness. So we would just encourage an exercise of measuring backwards. Like, what ground did you take? Did you started at $30,000, then you went to $50,000. Now you're $100,000 a year. You took ground, right? You started off as somebody who's cleaning the floors, and then you became a salesman, and then you became a senior vice president. That's awesome, right? So you got to look at the ground you've taken.
Yeah,
and so I think we have this ability to recognize this. But Randy, I tell you, one of the most powerful things that I think Suzette and I are communicating to our daughters today is the idea of measuring backwards. I've got 3 teenage daughters, and it's easy to live in this gap where we, if only I had an A in this class, if only I was, sitting here in the orchestra, if I was only, able to play this music, if I was only able to, they play tennis and golf, if I was only, well, I don't want them stuck in that mindset, right? So as a coach, what are we doing? Well, we're coaching them through to think differently.
Yeah. But I think things like social media have really interfered with that for young people, for old people too. You see these wonderful lives people are leading, like everything's, hunky dory, and it's
with great lighting, right?
Right. So, but I mean,
well,
I do want to say, like, what Nick was talking about is totally true, but this is not just about economics. I mean, I really think, it's not the promotion. And Dan Sullivan, the author of the book you're talking about, The Gap, The Gain in the Gap, he's got
Hardy.
Yeah. I mean, they've written some fantastic stuff, and I've got to give them credit because a lot of the early things, Dan's company coached me in the early 2000s and really got a lot from it. And one of those things was this idea of how do you measure success. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a whole nother episode. That's a whole nother thing. I think
you
really
could go into a deep dive on contentment and success. And you mentioned social media, but think about it for us. When there was that moment where talk about retiring, we retired from school or work for the night. We went home and that was it. Maybe we watched the news, a program, we had dinner, we sat down at dinner. If you got a new pair of sneakers, I didn't know till the next day at school. Right? If you went and had some amazing evening and went to a concert or went to the movies, I didn't know till the next day at the water cooler, right? But now everybody's putting their best foot forward and it's filtered. I see
what you did there.
And it's,
I see what you did there with the foot and the shoe. Got it.
But everybody's putting their best online and you're inundated with that feed of everybody's best posed, filtered. It's hard.
It's easy to get into the supposed to mindset. I'm supposed to have those shoes. I'm supposed to live in this house. I'm supposed to live in this subdivision. I'm supposed to drive this car. I'm supposed to have blah, 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 right?
And if I don't have what you told me is best, then I'm not living best.
That's right.
No matter what's important to me or what should be.
Yeah, that's good, Aaron.
Randy, you've always done a great job for our staff and for all the clients that come in and the students, helping them to really say, what's important.
Well, I think one of the things that people really worry about is how much is enough.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I feel like, getting a little off topic here, the idea of retirement and what that means really is identifying things that you love, identify things that give you fulfillment, give you joy. And I was thinking about this as you were talking, Nick. I think probably the last 5 or 6 employees that the firm's hired, I haven't been a part of it. I founded the firm, but I haven't been a part of those hires. And I don't know the last time I filled out a piece of paperwork, like electronically or physically.
And our back office said, thank the Lord.
I know.
I was so excited. I was able to slip in after, the gate got a little easier.
But I mean, the idea is that my unique ability? Is that my skill? We've got a couple of employees who are phenomenal folks, and they love paperwork. I mean, they love spreadsheets.
Yeah.
They love, the grind. They don't want to talk to anybody necessarily. They just want to be back killing it in their perspective position.
Absolutely.
Where they love and they get fulfillment.
Yeah.
That killed me.
Well, and the idea of being in the conference room or being at the lectern is very off-putting to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So we all have these unique abilities. And a matter of fact, a great team, whether it's your home, whether it's, identifying how your family works or your business, your relationship, maybe in a community like a church, there's certain people you don't want preaching.
Yeah.
And there's people you don't want teaching Sunday school, right? I mean, there are people, and I'm thinking of somebody we lost this year, a friend of ours, who was probably the best parking lot greeter on the planet. Took so much pride in it.
Oh, yeah.
There's nobody like this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Who, I mean, you couldn't wait to pull in the parking lot for this guy to greet you.
Absolutely.
I mean he
the
just
smile
made you
was
feel good.
infectious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's a silly, maybe a little thing, but really it's identifying those things that you have unique gifts in and doing more of those because they're energized. I know when Nick teaches a course in that, I know how that feels to do 4 hours or 6 hours of teaching or something like that. And if you put in it like, what's in you. If you pour out into people, it wasn't like physical labor. It wasn't like digging a ditch or anything like that, but you're exhausted, but you're also energized.
Yeah.
And if you want to understand the how to measure this a little bit. So if you're doing something that is within your unique ability, your unique skill set, your giftedness, you can pretty much do it 24/7. Like, you may forget to stop to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an extreme of it. But when you're doing the things that you love and you're passionate at, you don't have to take all the breaks. You don't have to you're not living to get home at a certain time. Yeah. And that doesn't matter whether you work for a company, work for yourself, or you're enjoying your retirement or vacation. Really being able to identify those things that provide that. And then, again, going back to what Nick was saying, what are the things that just suck the energy out of you? The things that when you're doing them, you have no passion for them, that the day is longer, et cetera. And ideally what you do is you position yourself in your life to eliminate those things and move. So how often should you retire? Anytime you can identify something like that, you should try to work towards finding a way out of it. And that will provide so much more contentment than the next promotion or more money or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've got I don't know, it's a handful of clients. I don't know the exact number, but I've got quite a few clients, and there's one specifically, Aaron, you've helped me with, where they really enjoyed the work. Mm-hmm. They did not love the management. Yeah. They didn't like the new higher ups that came in. Yep. And after, roughly 29 years, of doing it with, this great company, again, really skilled at what he did, lots of pride in that work. Right. He came into our office thinking he could do another 3 or 4 years, but wanted to know his numbers. Yeah. We helped him know his numbers. Yeah. Okay. And he said, so I could be done now. And Aaron, I think you said you could have been done 5 years ago. Okay. Right. So he knows his numbers. We show him and he knows he can be done. Yeah. He said, well, instead of 3 years, maybe I'll do another year. How long was that, Aaron, before we got the phone call? Was that like 2 weeks? Or
if it was even that.
Maybe a week, right?
Yeah.
So you're really sure I could retire now?
Yes.
I'll call him Gary. Yes, Gary. You can retire
Gary.
Now.
Yes.
And he did. He put in his time, took the last part of his vacation, and he was done. But here's the deal. He got a ton of fulfillment in the work he was doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he didn't want to give that up, but he also dreaded every single interaction he had with his higher ups. Yeah. Like every time, it was exhausting. And here he has been here for 28 years, helped put together systems and processes and why things are the way they are. And instead of management understanding why they were, we're going to do it our way, right? Yeah. Which is fine. Yeah. So here's what Gary does. We start talking, and we're like, do you really want to be done? Well, I mean, if only, right? Yeah. So now Gary's a consultant. Yeah. Doing the things he loves. Is he making as much money? No, but he doesn't need to make a dime. Right. He was called with a purpose and a passion for the work he did. God gave him unique abilities that he was using, that he got all that pride in. But now he controls his own schedule.
Right. Cherry picking the projects.
Cherry picks what he wants to do. Yeah. Has been solicited by his old company a few times to come back and do some project work. No, I think was the answer he gave. But the thing is, he had a great reputation and he's still able to do it.
And I might just be crazy, Nick, but I feel like he stands taller and his hair looks fuller since this.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think, even his wife made a comment about how he is just a different human being today.
Right. Because to Randy's point, there's nothing wrong with being excited about the work as long as you don't.
All right, guys, I just got to tell you, when you guys tell these stories, I realize why I love what I do and why, this is a passion, And while you're doing that, I don't know why I thought of this, but I remember having a lady who had a mom and a dad who were both needing long-term care needs, and she was the only one that could really assist them. and she was really feeling guilty because she had to travel a lot for her job. She was the major breadwinner of the family, and she needed to know that what could she do?
Right.
And we did similar to what you did. We ran through the numbers and said, you know what? Even if you took a 5-year sabbatical and took care of them, your skill set in that, you could come back in the workplace, but you really don't need to. And looking back, that's one of the most memorable things, because what she was able to do is realize with confidence that she could retire. This is probably 15 years ago, take care of mom and dad, which she did until their passing, never had to go back to work. And she's doing great. She's thriving. But she needed that confidence in order to do that too. So in that particular case,
and how amazing is that?
And by the way, I mean, she retired
yeah.
from work, but she was working harder than she ever worked. But she was passionate about taking care of her mom and dad.
Yeah, honoring them. Yeah. Well, and I
You
was
should
thinking,
honor your parents too, by the way. You never know. We could get old.
I do, and he did. Love you, Mom. But here's the deal. How powerful is it that you got to share that experience in that moment, that by helping them really understand where they were, she got to then create these incredible memories and times that she might never have had had she not done the work and got the coaching she got from you in that time. That's powerful. And honestly, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about finding that right mentor or that right person, that right coach that we use in our life is that they can possibly help you, make these decisions, like you say, and when you pull the cord on you've packed the bag and all that kind of stuff, or your your parachute, and you go to jump, right? You need to know somebody's jumped before.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
this is that confidence sometimes is one of the things that we get passionate about, but really helping people make those decisions, whether it is literally leaving work or selling a business or whatever it might be. But, sometimes it's moving into widowhood. Sometimes it's moving into a different phase of life with confidence, and you're kind of retiring from another life that you didn't mean to.
Absolutely.
You didn't want to even, but you need a plan and a path. So anyway.
These stories are pretty specific about clients of ours, and we've walked through it. If somebody's watching or listening today, what are some of the questions that you pose to our clients that help us get to? What are some questions that these guys should be asking themselves?
Yeah, well, Aaron, I think it kind of starts with, thinking about your core values. What is your life really about?
Yeah.
And I think about God's purpose for me on this earth. Am I walking in that?
Yeah.
And, it's easy to start off life in your journey knowing I am doing what God has called me to do in my life. Like I am fulfilled, I'm doing it. But sometimes life just kind of curves and we end up going down some side streets and, we end up at a place that we didn't necessarily intend to. So I think one of the first things that we can do, almost like a chiropractic adjustment to, get your back into line, is to pause and say, is my life today in line with what God's called me to do? And I think I start there. I start saying, the work I'm doing, the relationships with my kids, the relationship with my wife, am I going into work, excited to be there, thinking positive things about my colleagues or maybe my supervisor? What is my attitude towards them? Am I there because I'm there to be a ministry? And maybe I'm burned out, but maybe I'm burned out because of my attitude towards it. Am I really living in the calling that I have? So that'd be the first question I would have.
Cool. I think this is fantastic. Randy, anything else you'd like to add? Those questions, and again, to your point earlier, some of it maybe how somebody, it's important. And I think Nick even reflected on that a little bit, but changing your perspective or getting a fresh view on something.
Well, kind of an easy one to do that anybody could do right now is I would take out a piece of paper and I'd write down non-acceptables. What are things I don't want to do? And I got to tell you, I'm embarrassed about this a little bit, but outsourcing bookkeeping for me, I wanted to know all my numbers. I wanted to look at everything. It took me forever to really successfully hand off the bookkeeping that I was doing to somebody else who was good at it. I'd get behind. it drives me nuts trying to keep up with everything. Having real estate and other different ventures to keep up with was really difficult to keep everything up on a routine basis. So a non-acceptable for me is to continue to do bookkeeping. I can review things, but I don't have to do the data entry and keep up with it. So what are your non-acceptables? I don't, this is the stuff that drains me. Just, kind of make a list, because you know what? The way the mind works, they'll start popping into your mind, the things that you really can't stand. And then the other one is must have. What are the things I must have? Like, I've got to do this. Like, you hear about people who, they have to work out every day. Like, I know some people don't have that demon following them around, but like, they don't feel right unless they're fit. And so one of the things, they have to have time for that. Or it might be, I know, 1991, I was at a phase of my career and I made a decision and I said, you know what? I'm not missing any more ball games. I'm not missing any more of the kids' ball games and their sports and that. And I realized I had to change my business model in order to accommodate that. And it was one of the best things I ever did. Is I decided I wasn't going to miss games anymore. I wasn't going to miss practice. Got to coach. I got to do some things like that. So what are my must-haves and what are my non-acceptables?
Sorting out the have to, need to, want to, now, later. That's one of my favorite exercises in the offices. And one of the things that you touched on before, how many of our grievances start as allowances? And so having that, I'm not going to allow this anymore. But getting pen to paper, and then also be able to come back later and measure backwards and say, I said that was unacceptable. I set good boundaries. And
I'm going to add one thing, if you don't mind, Aaron. I know we have to wrap up, but I think one of the things that happens is when you start to identify these things that you are not acceptable, or things that you must have and must do, you need a plan. And I think what happens is when you identify those things, the way your brain works is your brain begins to work on them. Like, if you pay attention to a thing, you begin to change that thing. So if you make a list, and it's amazing how the mind works, and these are not acceptable to me, and if you work on it and pay attention to it a little bit, all of a sudden solutions start showing up that were there all along that you didn't know they were there.
And Randy, what I'd say, this episode is retire now, retire often. Right? But what you're talking about right now is review now and review often. Because it's one thing to write something down and make the list. It's another thing to read it every day and really have that buy-in. And I think, if we were to land the plane and we're thinking about, or maybe someone in our audience is thinking about retirement, I think making that list of, I want my life to look like X, and maybe it's part-time consulting work. Maybe it's volunteering, right here, we love Must Ministries, that they're doing great work in our community.
Oh, absolutely.
But, what is that next thing?
What we'd like to hear from you, email us at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If this is something you've already adopted, if you have found yourself retiring from things, we'd love to hear about that, what those things were, and what's the benefit from it. If today is the first time you've ever really thought about a concept like this, we'd love to hear from you. And you could tell us the things that you want to retire from now or this year, next year. Ultimately, we would just love to hear from you. We're so excited that you watch and listen wherever you're at. We appreciate your time today. We want to celebrate you for being coachable. Stay coachable. We hope you enjoyed today's show, but you may have questions for our coaches, and they can be emailed at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If you know someone that needs to hear this episode, we encourage you to share it. As a reminder, the content of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. On behalf of our coaches, we want to thank you for listening and for being coachable.
Yeoman's Consulting Group, a registered investment advisor YouTube channel based in Marietta, Georgia. We strive to provide comprehensive wealth management services for every stage of the journey. This platform is solely for informational purposes and is not offering advisory services or sales of securities. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Comments by viewers or recognitions are no guarantee of future investment outcomes and do not ensure that a viewer will experience a higher level of performance or results. Public comments posted on this site are not selected, amended, deleted, or sorted in any way. If applicable, certain editing of personal, identifiable information and misinformation may be deleted. The opinions expressed herein are as of the date of publication and are subject to revision due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass.